It's February 5th, 2002. This is TNT number 6. I want to ask you a question tonight. Something to think about. Who would you be if you never thought about yourself? If you never thought about, I want this, or I don't want that, or I should have done this, or I shouldn't do that, or I'll never be able to do this, or I hope I get that, hope I can't get that, I'm afraid of this. Suppose there was never any I. No I plans, no I dids, no remembrances about I. Remembrances, but not about I. Who would you be if you never thought about I? There'd still be someone there. All the stuff would be going on exactly as it does. You'd still see exactly what you see. You'd still do all the things you do, possibly different things, but you couldn't not do anything, because not doing something is doing something. So who would you be if you never thought about yourself? Who would have your problems? I mean, all the problems that we have are my problems. I'm afraid this will happen, or this won't happen, or I'll get this, or I won't get that. If you didn't think about yourself, who would have the problems? Or would there be any problems? Maybe there wouldn't be any problems. Who would have script? Who would have the script events? Who would your needle be needling? Who would do resistance behaviors? There'd still be consciousness. Everything that goes on would be just exactly as it is now. The only thing missing would be the personal concern. But also, the sense of identity would be gone. If I never thought about myself, I would have no sense of Lee. There'd be no Lee here. Who would be here? If you ever get stuck in a Zen group, and they ask you the koan, who were you before you were born, I'm giving you a huge hint right now. This is the answer to all the Zen koans. Robert tells a story, several times he told it, of a rich, successful banker, good life, nice house, nice family, 3 lovely daughters, happy life, very successful. And then a hurricane comes through town and kills his daughters, destroys his house, his daughters are killed. This particular banker was also an enlightened man. And he observes that this happened and watches it and doesn't react. And he goes to the funeral and he observes the funeral and he observes all the people crying at the funeral and he doesn't react. And the other relatives get quite angry with him and start beating him up about not having any reaction and what a callous bastard he is and a hard son of a bitch and hard time in him. And he says, well, he said, see, I had a dream last night and I dreamed I was a king and I was in this wonderful country and I had this beautiful queen and we were married and happy and we had 3 sons and my sons grew and taught them to hunt, taught them to fish, taught them to be princes. And then a war came and my sons all joined the army. And they were all killed in the army, in the war. And he said, now I don't know who I should mourn. My 3 sons or my 3 daughters. So now we go back to the question, who would you be if you didn't know who you were? And let's look at the other side of it. When you dream at night, like this banker dreamed that he was a king. When you have a dream tonight, suppose you have a dream that you're you. Many of our dreams are dreams about us being somewhere. So suppose you have a dream about you. And you're in a situation. Let's just imagine you're in a situation where you have some serious problem, because a lot of our dreams are sort of nightmarish and our minds are firing up all this stuff that we're worried about during the day. So you dream you've got a serious problem like Joel talks about. You dream you're out in the ocean and you're drowning. And you're worried about sharks and you're worried about the thing you're floating on lasting long enough, and you're worried you're going to starve, and you're worried you're going to not have any water, and you're worried about all these things. You're floating out there. And you're making all these decisions about what shall I do, can I afford to tear off one board out of my little platform and turn it into a paddle to paddle, and should I take off my shirt and try to make a sail out of it so that I can try to sail to land, because if I do that I'll get sunburned, and will I die of sunburn, or will I die because I don't get to the island, and all these decisions you're making. And Joel's point, of course, is his question is, what should you pray for? Should you pray for clouds, or should you pray for water, or should you pray for shark repellent, or should you pray for food, or should you pray for a paddle, or should you pray for a helicopter, or what should you pray for? And the answer, of course, is you should pray to wake up. And when you wake up, none of it was real. The time never existed. The dream went on for hours and the time never existed. The ocean, the clouds and the sky and the universe you were in never existed. That bubble never existed. And the sharks never existed, and the raft never existed. And the you never existed. And that you was making all sorts of decisions. Thought it was an entity, thought it was making decisions about whether to leave the shirt on or off, or make the sail or not. But did that you in the dream make the decisions, or were the decisions being made by the one who was asleep and dreaming? Who was making those decisions? The you in the dream thought she or he had free will. But did she? Or he? He or she never existed. It was all a bubble. So here, on the one hand, we're in the dream identified with an object that doesn't exist. And on the other hand, I'm asking you, who would you be in this life if you didn't identify with your body, if you didn't think the I thought all the time? Interesting puzzle. Who makes decisions? We all are very enamored of the idea that we have free will. We spend a great deal of time making decisions, trying to make the right decision. I was reading some poetry this morning by Stonehenge, an old Chinese Zen master, who was just commenting on the infrequency with which plans and events coincide. But nonetheless, we're very sure that we have free will, and we spend a lot of energy trying to make the right decisions. And we cling to the idea that we have free will. And we don't want to hear the possibility. We don't want to even consider that we don't have free will. And who would I be without free will? Who would I be if I never thought about myself? About the free will, I would ask, who is it that has the free will? Who thinks she has free will? Who thinks he's making these decisions or needs to make these life-determining decisions? If you never thought about yourself, you would still do something all the time. Something would always be being done. You would still enjoy things, laugh, feel good, feel joy. In fact, you feel joy all the time. Not just when things were going your way, because there would never be a your way. Things would always be going however they're going, and you would have never any thought that they should be different, because it's I that thinks they should be different.
Do you mean that there would still be feelings? I have a hard time imagining, my brain won't let me go there. But like, would your feelings get hurt, or is that the little I that's feeling hurt, or?
My feelings couldn't get hurt.
But yet,
my feelings only get hurt.
You could have happiness.
My feelings only get hurt if I think I should get something that I don't get, or if I have an expectation that isn't met, or if I think you treat me poorly, or if I think you don't do to me what you should be doing. If I don't think about myself, my feelings can't get hurt. But there is love, and there is joy, and there is bliss without any I. You don't need an I for that. You need an I for the pain. There's no pain if there's no I. Nothing can go astray. Nothing can be wrong because I think I know how things should be, and I have to have this plan so that I can measure them against it in order to see that they're wrong. Nothing could go wrong. I'd have no reactions to anything because there wouldn't be anyone to react, and I would not be surprised because I couldn't have had an expectation. But I'd still be there watching it, seeing it, blissing out, watching the zoo. morning, I was at the morning meeting, and there were 120 people over there, in 80 seats, and I was sitting in my usual place, and I guess I must have had a real shitty grin on my face, because Carlos looks at me and he said, what's going on with you? And I looked at him and grinned, and I said, I'm just sitting in the middle of the cage watching the monkeys, and that's where you'd be, just sitting in the middle of the cage watching the monkeys, and knowing you belong in the cage, except that there's no you, so you couldn't even know that. But just sitting in the cage watching the monkeys, and it would be fine. And it was just perfectly neat watching those crazy people. The energy level was going through the roof. It was just wonderful. But it would always be that way. If something happened, it would be blissful. If it didn't happen, it would be blissful. You'd never know it didn't happen because you didn't expect it to happen, because you had no plan. I'm trying to back us into understanding what the end result of understanding what Leelaa means, or understanding what Maya means, or understanding how self-inquiry works, or understanding the result of not reacting, and all the stuff we've been talking about. If you look at it from here, you can get a glimpse. There would still be consciousness. There would be no lack of being. There would be no lack of consciousness. There would be no lack of awareness. There just wouldn't be all that stuff.
This sounds great, and it sounds far out there for someone like me. So,
for someone like whom?
So human.
For someone like whom?
But it's hard to disengage, especially when you're dealing with kids. I would love to be able to say, do this whole self-inquiry and let him they do what they need to do. But it's hard to disengage when you're so pulled in. And I know it's not a spiritual adult. It's not an adult relationship with the two of them. But as trying to stay a spiritual adult, how can you disengage yourself from falling, I guess, into kid?
Yeah, well, that's a different question than this.
Or just to disengage yourself, with the self-inquiry and so forth.
The self-inquiry is the way to disengage. That's the point of all of this. The point of all of this is that whenever you find yourself engaged, you can ask, who's engaged? That's always a direct way to address this. For some people, for the people who can do that. For some people, that just makes no sense and they don't do that. In which case, there are other practices that bring you to where you can do that. Disengaging, it doesn't matter whether they're kids or not. The fact is that as a parent, and now we're back in this plane where we're done with the looking at it from the very top. As a parent, you have responsibilities, you think. And that's fine, and when you're in spiritual adult, you'll take care of those responsibilities. Animals who have no sense of I take care of their children, their pups, their whatever. It's not necessary to have a personal sense of I and spend time worrying about, and animals don't worry. They do what's in front of them. They do the instinctive right thing. In fact, they probably do a better job than we who worry do, because our worrying confuses us and prevents us from doing the instinctive right thing that we would be led to do if our minds were silent. In any role at all, you can practice disengaging. You can practice learning to be the witness of it rather than the participant. And you will still do all the things you need to do, but you will not be caught up in it or tied up in it or trying to figure it out or set a plan. It's the question Robert asks often. Robert often says, "Don't be the doer." Which is the same thing as we've been talking about. If you're not the doer, still things will be done. The question is, do you have a sense of a personal self who is doing this, or do you have a sense that you're this consciousness that we were talking about at the start, that if you had the sense of being the one who's not thinking about I, still the body would be doing whatever the body came here to do. And in the case of mothers, the body came here to take care of children, and so it would do that. It turns out, without a single thought. Interesting enough. Mm-hmm. It's so hard for us to, almost impossible for us to imagine not ever thinking about ourselves. It's so difficult to separate the consciousness from the physical body-mind phenomenon. And we are also thoroughly conditioned to think that the consciousness is within the body-mind phenomenon. And in fact, since you're conscious of the body-mind phenomenon, that proves very clearly that the body-mind phenomenon is within consciousness, rather than vice versa. If you think about it, it's very clear that your body and your mind are within your consciousness. So your consciousness can't possibly be within your body and your mind, or we've got things inside of themselves, which is a bit swallowing. So it's real clear that who we are is something which contains this body-mind, and yet we're so conditioned that we never notice that detail. And we always have ourselves tied physically into this structure and think, the one that we're associated with, apparently. We always think that, that we're in it, that we're looking out through these eyes. And that can't be true, because we can't possibly, because all of that is within our own consciousness, what we call our own consciousness. And if we don't have the word our own, then all of that is within consciousness, which is the truer statement. See, there's consciousness, and there's all these body-mind phenomena, so to speak, running around in the consciousness. But there's just the one consciousness. But it's doing whatever it wants to do. It's like all the people in the dream. In that dream we were having, suppose there were 20 people on that raft with you. Okay? Now think about that. There's 20 people on the raft, and let's assume that there's only room for 18 on the raft, and so the 20 people are trying to decide who to throw off. Should we throw off the children, or should we throw off the ones that are going to die first, or should we throw off the ones that are sickest, or who should we throw off so that the 18 that will fit will live, and there's these 20 people on this raft making decisions and fighting and arguing, And it's a dream. There are not 20 people with 20 independent minds there, having their own 20 independent sets of thoughts and exercising their own 20 independent pieces of free will. It's all in your mind, It's all a dream. And yet, that looks very much like this, in which there's 14 of us, or however many there are here, thinking we're individuals, so apparently thinking we're individuals, and apparently asking questions and making decisions about whether we're going to come back next week and listen to this nonsense or not, like that, And just like in the dream, there were 20 people, but there was only the one consciousness that was generating the dream. So here there are 12, 14 of us, but there's only the one consciousness generating this. There's no difference.
The reading that we were doing today was talking about when we think about meditating, we think about quieting our mind. But this was saying that another option is to say to yourself, there's no mind to quiet. Mm-hmm. And then you're automatically quiet. How does that tie in? Yeah.
Rajneesh's great question, how shall I quiet my mind? With my mind? Yeah. What other tool would you use? I can't quiet my mind because I am a construct within my mind. The I is an I thought. And the I thought is, so to speak, generated within the body-mind phenomenon. So, that can't happen. It's all Leelaa. Back to the Leelaa. It's all just Leelaa. It's all light images on the screen. And you're the screen. I don't expect that people will, as a result of that question that I asked at the start of this little homily, stop ever thinking about yourselves or ever having I thoughts, but the point is to, maybe you can see that as a reference point. If you can think about that, what it would be like, what's there if there's no I thought. And if you can also think about what's there for the other 19 people on that raft, since you're the one that's dreaming, what's there for them. If you can think about that, perhaps you can get a bit of image about this. The game is to, the first game is to stop being endlessly caught up in it. Because if you're always caught up in the Leelaa, then you can make no progress at all. So the first step is to do whatever you need to do to get a moment of silence once in a while, a moment of peace. Then the second step is to expand that period, the frequency of those and the duration, and work on not reacting. Because when you react, you're caught up, so you begin to develop the ability to not react. And the step back slightly from that is where you begin to be like that guy, like the banker was at the funeral, where you're watching what's happening, or like I was sitting there that morning in the meeting watching the monkeys, just perfectly happy to watch the monkeys with no thought about the fact that it should be any different or anything. That's the next step, is to develop the time that you spend just watching. And as you progress along this path, or whatever path happens to happen for you, when you get to the point that you're just watching, if you were always just watching, there would be no reason for you. There's no more any, the I thought, it has no function. If you're just watching and you're not measuring against and you're not making plans and stuff like that, you're at the point that I was talking about, and there's no longer any use for the I thought. And the way you get rid of the I thought is by withdrawing energy from it. The way you stop your mind is by withdrawing energy from it. You don't try to not think, because that adds energy to it. What you do is not care whether you think or not, and not react to any of the thoughts. And if you don't react to the external world, that means you're not caught up in your script or whatever you're caught up in, and you've got a chance. If you then at the next level cannot react to your thoughts, then there's a whole nother level of quietness. And during this process, there will be more and more glimpses of the complete gap. When there's clearly nobody there. And, it's a progressive thing. Robert gives the who am I method is the most direct method to put you right there, but that's also something that needs to be practiced a lot. It doesn't put you right there in the first try when you try it, but what that does is, first of all, you're not reacting. to the physical situation, you're inquiring about it rather than reacting, and already you've transcended the situation, because the minute you're talking about a situation rather than caught up in it, it's transcended. So if something comes to you and instead of reacting to it, you ask, who's it coming to, already you're way ahead of the game. And then if you follow and then the technique that you use to get ahead of the game to where you're looking at the situation now, and you're not even looking at the situation, so you've withdrawn the focus and looking at, not only are you not caught up in it and not reacting to it, you're not even looking at it. You're wondering who it is that's looking at it. And you follow that, I thought. And you start to see what I'm talking about. So it definitely is the direct way, and that can be applied. And the other advantage is that this is not a meditation. You can do this while you're driving. You can do this when the guy in front of you cuts you off. You can do this when you want to give somebody the finger. You can do this, when your kids are screaming and you want to strangle them. Instead of strangling your kids, ask who wants to strangle them. The kids will appreciate it. You'll appreciate it. When you can. And all of this is, all of this is always, whenever you can, as much as you can. And it starts out maybe just a little bit, but just a peak. And sometimes you get a real peak. And then it's true. But the good news is that even if you haven't had the experience yet, just understanding, whether or not you believe it's all Maya, if you believe it's all a construct in consciousness or not, many of you I know have seen and found useful the idea of acting as if it were that way. If you act as if it were just Leelaa, if you acted, some of you have told me how you have handled the situation much better when you're looking at the person and thinking what a great job they're doing, playing their role of being a son of a bitch, rather than being worked up about it, or being a mother, or being a child, or being foolish, or being, whatever they're being, if you're thinking, gee, what a great job they're doing playing that job, nobody else could possibly do that as well as they are, then, you're using the idea of it being a Leelaa, and who cares whether it is or not, really. The fact is that while you're looking at it that way, you're not caught up in it, and you're free from it, and you've transcended it, and your life is better. So, yeah.
I've experienced, I have experienced, from my experience, I share with you, that I react to people differently, or sometimes not react at all, or try to communicate to people that I'm interacting with in this other level that seems foreign to them, and then they look at me like I'm nuts. And what that does is it makes me go into the silence even more, because I know that's where the real reality is. But it gets difficult to stay in what I call this worldly plane, and knowing that there's other pure, infinite consciousness and reality.
Sure. That's true.
And people even sometimes think that I'm like, don't like people, or don't like, and it has nothing to do with that.
Like the story where they thought the banker, was really a hard son of a bitch because he was not crying over the loss of his daughters. And the fact is, he merely knew that it's all a dream, and that's just on the screen. Nobody ever dies. People, what you do, what we learn to do, what I've learned to do is only talk about this kind of things to the people who come to me and draw it out of me. I don't ever volunteer this information to anybody. That's a defensive thing on this apparent plane, so to speak.
You don't walk up to people whose moms just died and say, well, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't want to hear that.
That's that thing that Joel talks about, trampling on your pearls.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it when you say something and someone looks at you like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, sure.
And it takes a lot away from it.
If you're not clear on it, if it's not gelled, you may lose it by doing that.
Yeah.
No, that's the principle of secrecy.
Yeah.
The fact is that why would you want to, in order to even want to pass this information on, there has to be an ego lead that wants to. The fact is, who cares? If you're coming from there, it is a so to speak problem. Joel Goldsmith, for instance, has a series of probably 10 talks that he gave on living between two worlds, and it's exactly that, because Joel had a knock your socks off experience once, and proceeded to teach for another 30 or 40 years, and of course during this his own experience was deepening and deepening, and it was just getting harder and harder and harder and harder for him to come back to even talk, and he didn't want to have to be here, and yet, his body continued to suck air in and out, and
Right, it was like when I was doing my 4-step work. It was like I didn't want to get into the 4-step work because I was coming from a different place.
mm-hmm.
That was all, I could see that was all of this realm. It was like, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
we have to go through the exercise anyway, but...
Yeah, that's what Jesus meant about, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God. When you're in Caesar land, you do the Caesar thing. If you want to fit in at AA, you do your steps, you call your spiritual advisor a sponsor so that you'll fit in and stuff like that. The fact is that we're talking, again, as if there were a choice involved here, rather than we're talking as if there was a free will element here, as if you could do something different than say what you say, or not say what you say, or feel what you feel, or not feel what you feel. So the assumption is always that we have a choice about that. And I ask you, if you'll tell me who it is that has that choice, then we'll talk about it. But who is it that has that choice? The one that has the choice is the body-mind phenomenon that is within consciousness, and there's like the other 18 people on the raft, the other 19 people on the raft, they appear to be making choices. But it's your dream. And here too, it's your dream, but it's the one you that we all are. So what you do is watch the discomfort of people thinking you're crazy, and you watch how well you fit in or don't fit in as you do or don't do your 4th step, and you watch, what happens. And while you're not reacting to the situation and not caring about whether you fit in or don't fit in, and not caring about any of that, then your experience will deepen and deepen and deepen. Then you'll get to where you don't give a shit.
I'm starting to get it. I don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, anybody that's really clear is also, incidentally, absolutely certifiable by any professional definition of certifiably insane. Now, I certainly should not be allowed to work on any jury because it's real clear to me there is no good and evil, so how could I possibly be asked to make decisions about good and evil, But they call me to jury duty, and I answer the lawyer's questions honestly when they ask me questions to see whether I should be seated in the jury or not, and then I do whatever I do, and I argue about, whatever happens is what I'm saying, and I don't need to clarify to everybody in the court that I'm real clear on the fact that there is no good and evil.
You might get your name crossed off permanently.
Yeah, that could happen. Might get a new jacket. But the fact is that you don't need to even think about that. It happens. Whatever happens, happens, How many times have you very carefully made a decision between A and B and decide A, and then immediately your mind starts telling you about all the good things about B and the bad things about A. Okay? So you decide, okay, you're right, B. And now your mind tells you about all the good things about A and the bad things about B. And you finally see in this progression, say, nope, by God, I am going to do A no matter what. And you refuse to think about it anymore, and you get right up to the situation and you do B. Hey. And the reason you do B is because you came here to do B, and the rest of the energy was totally wasted. I mean, the body was going to do B when you got conceived, I mean, the fact is that there was no free will involved at all. There was not even any free will involved in deciding whether or not to make the decision. It was all just happening. Just the play on the screen unfolding. I can't imagine why anybody would want free will. Now you got all the possibilities of making wrong decisions and doing the wrong thing and losing and all that stuff. Robert always used the term choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. Love that phrase. Choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. It's not even you watching the show. I mean, that's one stage that you go through where you move into the witnessing consciousness rather than the doer. But then the next stage is that it's not even you witnessing, it's just whatever's happening is happening.
I had something strange happening, but now that you're saying that, maybe it wasn't. But I was taking this writing class for like a year, and then one day I just wasn't going to go back, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't have to go to A or B or decide what. I just knew I wasn't going to go back. And I called and she asked why, and I said, I don't know. I just not. And so is it kind of like
sure.
Felt like
the reason you didn't go back is because you didn't go back. There's no reason. The reason you didn't go back is because you didn't go back. And you didn't know that you weren't going to go back until you didn't.
Yeah. I can see the changes happening, little things to me, and then the other stuff.
Next time you're laying in the bed in the morning trying to make a decision as to whether to get up or not, refuse to make the decision. Just refuse to make the decision. Decide, I will not decide. Today I am not going to decide to get up. I'm serious. Make this. I am not going to decide to get up. And see what happens.
All this work is for people who don't have kids.
I think people that do have kids especially.
Yes.
I did that when Robert talked about this stuff, and I said, well, let's, so the obvious conclusion is that, if there's no free will, then there is a time tomorrow morning at which I'm going to get up, my feet are going to hit it's already established in cast iron, my feet are going to hit the deck tomorrow morning at 6:12:33 or some such time, okay? Regardless of whether I make any decisions or not, it's already in the books. So I used to get up and I used to wake up and think about, well, I wonder, do you want to get up? Yeah, maybe I'll get up, and I decided I will not decide to get up. And I'd find myself in the bathroom brushing my teeth, without a conscious thought about that. My mind would get to thinking about what I'm going to do today or tomorrow or yesterday, and the body would get out of bed and I'd be brushing my teeth before I had the next thought. The body got up exactly when it was supposed to and knew enough to go brush its teeth and brush its hair. The body does that just fine without any attention from me. I'm not required. I mean, it used to be accompanied by a lot of decision making, but the decision making never had anything to do with what was happening. It's just, that's part of the illusion. I mean, I spent lots of energy making decisions, some of which I then carried out and some of which I didn't. The body does what it came here to do.
Sometimes I go along like that, and then I get into these periodic panics, like, oh, okay, I should have started work an hour ago. Now I'm going to be late. Now I'm not going to get to leave. I won't be able to take a shower, and I'll start, and then I'll, maybe I'll think of something like, who said that, or whatever, and try to bring it. And I inevitably always get done in time to do whatever and get here.
Mm-hmm. Or not.
Or not, yeah.
The fact is,
or not would be it, yeah. That's
the fact is that everything gets done that needed to get done. And you can tell, because if it didn't get done, it didn't need to be getting done. I mean, the fact is that whatever gets done, and that's perfect. It's only the fact that you have a list of a different length. That introduces the rub. And if you had, if your list was shorter, you would have done more. If your list was longer, you do less. I mean, you do whatever you do. I worked with your sponsor for years on getting her to realize that all you do is the next thing.
She tells me that.
Prioritize your list and do the most important one. And then do the most and then prioritize your list and do the most important one. And then prioritize your list and do the most important one. At some point you find out you're in bed and you look back and say, well, I got this far as how many I was supposed to do today, because that's how many got done.
That's amazing, because now that I'm not working, my days are so much like that, and I get things happen when I don't think they're going to happen, and all of a sudden I'm just down the road and they happen. And I usually get things just, it's been an amazing experience to be able to do that.
Everything that's supposed to happen will happen. Everything that's supposed to get done will get done.
And all of a sudden I'll be sitting there and I'll say, wow, I didn't realize I was going to have time to get this done. This is cool, I'm like, this is really working.
So you used to be in the habit of spending about 40% of your energy worrying about what to do, and that 40% was not available for the doing.
That's what I find.
So you were working at 60% capacity when you were trying to organize your day. So it would go well.
At least my Palm Pilot's almost empty now. That's a huge thing for me, and it's great, I mean, it's just amazing how it's just kind of emptied itself, but yet I'm so full of everything all day long.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to control every aspect of my day anymore, which is nice. I just can let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a big growth for me.
Yeah, and it's so much easier. And just as much gets done. And it's so much more fun. So much more joyful. We'll put the medical profession out of business.
Except for the strangling the kid part.
That's the police that's the police that continue to have. No, I mean, the fact is that if we could all do that, there'd be no stress. And if there was no stress, I mean, literally zero stress. And if there was literally zero stress, 90% of the medical problems would disappear just like that.
Well, in the short amount of time I've been coming, I work for a large corporation and have many, many duties, and would stay awake all night wondering how I was going to get them done. And now I just get done whatever gets done, and I go home and don't worry about it anymore. You know what? Nobody told me that I'm doing anything wrong. So I guess that works.
Yeah, they can't conceive of the fact that you're doing that. If you told them that, they think you were lying. So.
There's an interesting thing. I spent a year and a half getting up every morning at 4:30 to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated to get up that early. That's just an ungodly hour. Nobody should have to be up at 4:30. I mean, it's so dark. But I forced myself to get up, and I hit this new alarm 2 or 3 times, you know, and fought it all the way. And then my hours change, and I don't have to get up till 5:30. And since then the alarm goes off, I don't get to snooze mine. If I hit it, I get up before it goes off again. And I just bounce out of bed. And it's the mind thing. I get to sleep until 5:30 instead of I have to get up at 4:30. And it's that whole thing. And it's really much easier to do, even though I'm getting probably less sleep now than I was when I was getting up at 4:30. It's easier to get up, and I feel more fresh all day because I'm not worrying about getting up at 4:30. Strange.
Oh, and it's all that way. Just
But, and I can see how if I just incorporate thoughts like that, and the rest of my life, which really doesn't exist anyway, I can be happier.
yeah. The other example is people with insomnia who lay in bed trying to sleep. Well, of course they don't sleep. If instead you recognize the fact that the body doesn't require sleep, it needs 2 or 3 hours of sleep so that the brain can do its dream thing, but other than that, you know, what your body needs is complete rest. So, you get a Joel tape or a Robert tape or something like that, and you put it beside your bed, and if you can't sleep, put on a tape. And lay there peacefully, and your body does all the flushing out of poisons and everything it needs to do, and everything recovers, and you're at total rest, and you're hearing Robert or Joel, and you're growing spiritually, or they bore you and you fall asleep. And what happens, of course, is that people put on, very quickly these insomniacs start putting on Robert, and they fall asleep in 10 minutes. I mean, they have the same tape for months because they can't get through it. And the reason they're falling asleep is because they're not trying to get to sleep. If you accept, I'm awake, I guess it's time to meditate or pray. Or my sponsor used to call those wake-ups at 2:30 in the morning. At 2:30 in the morning, she'd say, "Well, that's just a call to prayer."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
It's just a call to prayer. When you wake up at 2:30 in the morning,
Oh, okay.
it's just a call to prayer. God needs you to pray for somebody. You don't need to know who. Just wake up and pray. Mm-hmm. Just a call to prayer. And in a 3D picture, that's probably true, I mean, so you sit there and you meditate, and somebody else in Ethiopia happens to be in sync with you, and they get lifted by it, and they wonder what happened, and who knows what's going on in the Leelaa.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what's going on in the Leelaa. It's just lights on a screen. We keep trying to identify these objects. It's just lights on the screen. Anything else? So I've been sort of wondering, the script's coming up real soon, and of course that's really intense. And I've about said all the things that I really felt moved to say. We can say them again and talk about them at great length, but my real question is do we want to stop doing the Tuesday night talks for a while because we're all going to be caught up in script work and doing all that, and that's pretty intense, or do you want to keep on doing this, and we can change the format of this, we can make it into an auxiliary script discussion group or whatever you want to do. I don't care what happens here. People keep showing up, so what do you want to do? Do you want to break this during script, or do you want to keep going, or what do you want to do?
I like to keep going too. Most of it's too, just day-to-day stuff that comes up that I know I have a place for.
All right, so we'll just talk about whatever we talk about, and keep doing it. That's fine with me. The more often we come together, the better it is for all of us. Just coming together in the consciousness is. And some people are more inclined to come when we talk than when we sit silently. There are people who want to come sit in the silence, and there are people who feel like we should be talking or something. So it makes no difference to me. It doesn't matter what happens, really.
It's been a wonderful respite during the week,
Good.
Yeah, really good fit.
Then let's keep doing it.
Thank you.
So I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Excellent.
Love you all.
Love you.